Good evening, I'm Shumisa Rehman and you're watching PTV World. Today in The Minister, our special series, we're joined by Minister of State Zulfiqar Abbas Bukhari. He is a Special Assistant on Overseas Pakistanis and Human Resource Development. Assalamu alaikum ji. Thank you very much for taking out the time. Firstly, when you were appointed on this post, there were a lot of articles which questioned Prime Minister Khan's decision to appoint you, and I thought that since you had taken out the time to give us this interview, to answer all those questions that were asked regarding why you qualified for this particular post, what would you have to say?
See, the first and foremost question should be asked is that what is the merit for any post when it comes to ministerial level to be in the cabinet? So it's not a question about me, it's about then what kind of criteria do you apply for all the others? Is the criteria only that you have to be an electable? So if you're elected, but you've never left Pakistan, you don't know anything about overseas Pakistanis, but you're given this ministry, that's okay. All of a sudden you've met criteria. So I think, even in the future, the government and the country needs to decide that what criteria do they...
I think generally when people talk about criteria, they are looking to see if the person who is being given that particular ministry actually has the relevant background and knowledge to be able to run it in an effective manner. So having said that, do you feel that perhaps the Prime Minister thought that because you are an overseas Pakistani, you've spent time between both countries, and perhaps you would actually be more capable of understanding the issues that overseas Pakistanis face?
Yeah, I mean, look, I definitely believe that that's obviously one of the main criteria behind it, is that I was born in Britain, I lived there most of my life, not all of it. So I had an understanding, I've traveled the world, I have a large reach in the Pakistani diaspora over there as well. So I guess that was a major criteria for it. But the Overseas Ministry and Human Resource Development has a very wide bandwidth. A lot of things come into it. It's not just that we need to worry about what that Pakistani sitting in England or the United States or the GCC is thinking. It's also about the facilities that you have to give them from within Pakistan, and the Pakistanis that we send abroad to go work in as our biggest export in a way. So making sure that their well-being is taken care of, the family's well-being is taken care of. So it's a large bandwidth that goes across, you need to intervene with the Interior Ministry, you need to intervene with NADRA, you need to intervene with the Foreign Office. So there's quite a lot of work in it to be done. So I suppose he felt that, okay, fine, since it's quite large, then maybe I could handle it. And I'm grateful to him. He's recently given me the chairman for the National Tourism Board as well. Yes. So I'm grateful for these responsibilities, and I hope I can perform up to what he feels is adequate.
How long did it take you to do your homework effectively, so that you knew the kind of workload that you would be taking on? Just as you said right now, it's just not about looking after or facilitating the Pakistani that goes abroad to work. It's also about human resource development, which is a very integral part. And you said you have to work with different organizations. Has it been a lot to absorb and take on, or have you been so well prepared that you actually just hit the ground running and knew exactly what to do?
In cricketing terms, you said you have to let the bat do the talking. So I let my work do the talking, inshallah, in time to come. But it was actually a slightly different way. The Prime Minister expressed interest in a certain role for me. I expressed interest in the same role as well. And then it wasn't that, okay, you're the perfect choice for this. He said, present to me.
You were asked to present to him
correct.
Before? Okay.
So I went over, he gave me about 3-4 days, and I prepared a presentation. And so I looked at the various departments involved, and I gave him not a very detailed presentation because you don't have the insight to all. There's like 6 departments under me, but I gave him a sort of macro level bird's eye view of where I feel where they should be. And I said, looking at it as a businessman, from someone from the private sector, from somewhat of a venture capitalist, I always looked at it as that company that has the most amount of potential, okay, but is completely overlooked. In Pakistani terms, this ministry was defined as Kudde line, right? So this is what it was. And I said, absolutely not. This is actually, I think, could be the most prominent and one of the most viral ministries in the cabinet, in our government. And alhamdulillah, inshallah, I think we'll get there.
Okay, so you said that this is a ministry that historically has been seen as a sidelined ministry, a ministry that's not really up to par. But yet you said that you saw potential in this to become something much greater than it ever has been. Why do you think people have always sort of neglected this particular ministry, and why do you feel it has so much potential?
I want to say something categorically. I categorically believe that this ministry was sidelined, A, because overseas Pakistanis have always been sidelined. You know, they've only been used for one thing, and that's for raising funds. That's it. When you have a natural disaster, when you have to do fundraising, they're the front runners. But when it comes for inclusiveness within society, integrating back into Pakistan, or being sent out to Pakistan, they have zero rights. So when you look at our labor that we sent abroad, no, they have zero rights when they go there, and the minister and the government doesn't care. When the Pakistanis from overseas come back and want to move back into their motherland, they don't care. They don't want them, rather. They just say, send us the dollars, but don't come yourself. A, this thing, and you know, there's various reasons for that. And B, the other issue is that this ministry has departments which are self-run. They're somewhat of companies of their own, right? You have EOBI, you have OPF, you have OEC, you have the Bureau. So these are fund generating, the revenue generating departments. OPF is actually in fact a company, but they make money, and they make quite a lot of money. Okay. And if run correctly, they can be extremely profitable for the government. So what I believe is that this ministry was purposely sidelined because the ministers in it, you had a minister from PPP, Khurshid Shah, you've had ministers from Noon, you've had ministers from other political parties. You know, they used this ministry as basically a shop to go, just a cash register to go pull out money and squander it wherever they did. You know, it had the most amount of corruption involved in this ministry, but the least amount of noise. Usually you have a high profile ministry, if it could be finance, let it be shipping, let it be railway, you know, communications. These ministries were high profile with high level of corruption.
But the first question that, you know, as an overseas Pakistani would ask you, because you're representing them now, they find it very odd that they have the right to vote, but they don't have the right to contest an election. Is it?
Look, I have a different view on that, and everyone's entitled to their own view. I don't believe that one viewpoint is correct on it.
Okay.
My personal opinion on it is that if you have the right to vote, it means you're allowed to give your equity into a country. You're allowed to give your thought, your vote bank, you know, you're putting some sweat in the game. So it's very important that if you're allowed to do that, that means you should be allowed to contest also. Either you shouldn't be allowed to vote, or if you are, then you should be allowed to contest at the same time. It's a strange concept. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense, because the minute you're allowed to vote, it means that you're putting some equity into the game. So if you're allowed to play the game, then that means you should be allowed to play fully. You can't just say you can play to the first round, but not to the second and third. So in my personal opinion, I'll be doing everything in my capacity to try to change the law and allow overseas Pakistanis. There might be certain stipulations in it of what kind of overseas Pakistani are you, in a way, but they should definitely be allowed to contest, I believe.
Okay, coming back to the fact that you said that from what research or homework you've done into this ministry, coming into it, you said that there has been a history of corruption. What is being done about those corruption cases?
Well, look, it's about what's being done.
Because you want a clean house, right?
I want a clean house, but it's about what's being done about those departments. Okay, I mean, the cases are extremely important, I agree with you, and they need to be highlighted, and they are. White papers are being prepared. I'm just making sure that they're 100% correct on certain things. We're nearly there. And a lot of the cases that are stuck in the Supreme Court, let's say in the Department of EOBI, which is a pension fund, is an old age pension fund, there's about 4 properties which we're hopefully, inshallah, getting to the bottom of, and we're going to have them cleared from the court so we can actually start utilizing them, either sell them or get rent from them. You know, imagine you got pensioners' money. In which part of the world can you have pensioners' money invested into an asset, and that asset has a stay on it, it has no income, it's not doing anything, it's not self-generating anything, and this is pensioners' money. And at the same time, we can barely pay our pensioners 6,500 rupees. We had 5,250 rupees was the pension, and we took it to 6,500 rupees. So 6,500 rupees. Now my goal is, my ultimate goal would be to try to take the pensioners' pension up to 15,000 as the same as the minimum wage. Obviously the first goal is 10,000. This can only be done when all your assets are being utilized correctly. We have billions of rupees of assets which these guys, at the time they bought assets which were worth 28 to 30 crore rupees. They bought them for 1.1 billion rupees.
So
we have around 6 of them. They paid 3 times the price. We have another ex-prime minister whose son and son-in-law plot was worth 1 crore rupees. They bought it for 6 crore rupees. You know, completely changed the amount on it. So,
okay.
You know, these levels.
These are examples of the corruption.
These are just some examples.
So, okay, so you're talking about, you're giving a few examples of the kind of corruption that has happened, and you're not going to move forward with anything until you have all the evidence in terms of identifying who did this corruption, whether they should be charged or not.
I'm moving forward on everything.
Okay.
I don't believe in that I should stand still, because every minute that I waste, it's not my minute. It's in this department, it's very different. The money, and I know that a couple of anchors last night, or a couple of nights, if this is aired on Friday, then a couple of nights earlier, talked about EOBI with zero knowledge of what EOBI is and zero knowledge of what the facts and figures are, which was quite funny, seeing the two do this comedy show. But the thing about it is that these are self-generating. They're all the departments. So the point is that if I waste time in not doing the right and not working in turn to generate money and just sit around until I catch the people that have done corruption, let's say, or mismanagement, then I'm wasting these poor people's time. I'm wasting the overseas people's money. I'm wasting the pensioners' money. So what I'm doing is that I'm looking at the low-hanging fruits, which we can work on aggressively and get done in the next 6 months, at the same time working on the white papers and all the corruption cases.
So you're saying that you actually have to take an approach where everything is being looked into.
Everything.
Do you have the kind of team? Because you, as just one person heading this ministry,
well, look, I'm creating teams. You know, over the years in history, in my businesses, I've been very successful in creating good teams and turning things around, and then, you know, selling them on or running the company. That's what I do. But you know, I've got good people in other departments as well. Yesterday with the Attorney General, with the Auditor General, and we've given them cases, and my plea to them and the courts has always been that do your case on the side, keep it going full throttle, but don't just completely put a stay on the asset either, so that for the next 10 years it's tied up. You know, allow me to get going.
Allow you to at least use that asset.
Yeah, because the case is irrelevant from the asset now. Now the case is separate and we've cleared the asset. So let us work on the assets and let me work on do my work. You guys do your work on this side. And inshallah, I think we're going to find the right solution.
Okay, so you are running a ministry, which is a lot of work, and you have recently been given an additional charge, I believe, a few weeks ago, where you are heading the National Tourism Board. You also have a business that you run, from what you've also said, very efficiently and profitably, not here, but in the United Kingdom. Who's taking care of that while you're doing this?
Good question.
I know I'm an anchor. It's my job to ask questions.
Look, you know, alhamdulillah, I set up business in London. You know, I have more than 100 people working in that business. So there are teams. There's my managing director, who's running the business at the moment. Obviously, not being there, there's a lot of hurdles that have come about me being here for the last 9 months. Imagine 9 months I've been here, and I've visited London for maybe 4 days. So it doesn't matter how good of a businessman you are, you're going to end up making losses, because 4 days is just not enough in 9 months. But you know, I once mentioned it to the Prime Minister, and he said, you know, consider it as zakat, and I guess that's what it is.
So you're going to be here for another 4 years at least, and that'll be enough time to work on this. So you're okay with your business running a loss over there, and you contributing all this time to Pakistan to actually make your ministry a viable and a productive one. Did you always think like this? Or is this something that happened recently once Prime Minister Khan came to office and he offered you
If I could be completely honest, I mean, it's not that I wanted to run in a loss, and inshallah it won't. but it may not be working as efficiently as it may have if I was there. But we have our own plans, and Allah is the greatest of planners. But I've been with Khan Sahib for nearly 10 years, and he's not only like an elder brother or a friend or a mentor. He's also someone who I've sort of probably evolved in front of. At the same time, perhaps in some ways, how he, the best thing about our Prime Minister is that he evolves every single day. He's not a person that stays stagnant at all, and that's the sign of an intellectual human being. So I guess in that journey somewhere, that evolution sort of sprinkled on.
So this wasn't at the back of your mind initially 10 years ago when you decided to help
Look,
out
maybe
with
not the
Pakistan,
first couple of years perhaps
Okay.
not the first couple of years after I met him, but I mean, ever since I did meet him, it was always about, country first. It was all about doing something. He always said to me that, why do you care so much about making money? It's it's a means to an end. It's not the end. And so I guess eventually that sort of school of thought was in me quite a lot, because even if you look at before these 9 months, I was in Pakistan a lot. I didn't miss any major meeting. I didn't miss any major event. I would fly over even for a week just to come see him, see my parents, and go back. So I was here a lot, regardless. So my family, people don't realize, are deep rooted into Pakistan as well. So it's not that all of a sudden I've just jumped out of the thing. It's been an evolution.
For people who don't know much about your background, there's also a lot of speculation on, there's phrases that we hear like offshore companies. We hear
Sure.
about your name being put on the ECL list. We hear about NAB cases. So people do question, they're like, what is the source of income?
Sure.
Why are all these questions surrounding this gentleman not being answered? And if they're not being answered, was it wise of the Prime Minister to appoint him as Minister of State? So, and you've been, completely forthcoming so far. So if we were to go back into your history, I would like to know, did you start your business yourself? Was it with your parents? How did you manage to make it into a success? And you've obviously answered the second part, which is why you're here now. So coming back to your beginnings.
Look, I think all the things you mentioned are true.
You do hear these phrases, right?
I do, and I was on the ECL, and I do have offshore companies, and I was on the blacklist. I do or did have a NAB case against me. So all these things are true, but I've never run away from them. When I was first put onto the blacklist, I could have gone from Saudi back to London and let this case handled as the ex-Prime Minister's sons do. But I came back 3 days later and I said, I'll take it face on. I was illegally put onto the blacklist. I went to court, I won my case. I stayed here the entire time. I was then wrongly put onto the ECL. I went to court, I won my case. I didn't have the PM, I was in the cabinet. I could have asked the cabinet to take me off. Right, it's within the cabinet's discretion to take me. I didn't. I went to court and fought my case in court for weeks and weeks and weeks, being on the ECL, and I won my case.
So why
I've given every single piece of document to NAB. There's nothing left from my side that I haven't given them. I'm allowed to own offshore companies. I'm not denying I own offshore companies. I'm saying I absolutely own them. There's a big difference between being the Prime Minister of Pakistan, saying all your source of wealth is here, all of this, and then all of a sudden having offshore companies on your sons and daughters and everybody's names. So all these things are completely
You're
different
saying
from
you've
someone.
been very categorically clear from the get-go that I do have offshore companies, I have businesses.
These things are very different from someone who's never lived in Pakistan except from the age of 14 to 17, has never had any business in Pakistan, who's born in London, his entire business is in London. My father lived in London for 50 years. His entire source of income is in UK. So there's no similarity or there's no case of NAB in that sense. Now, it's actually not even NAB's case. They shouldn't even be intervening in my offshore companies. It's got nothing to do with them. The only reason I was intervened into it was because I was friendly with the Prime Minister of Pakistan. That's the only reason. So their only check should be that does the Prime Minister of Pakistan have any vested interest in my offshore companies? If they can clarify he doesn't.
There's also that question that's asked. Generally when they talk about these cases, does the Prime Minister of Pakistan have any interest in it? But if you
I didn't know the Prime Minister in 1996 when these companies were open, or 2007 when these.
If you could just clarify that once and for all and say, look, I'm a person who is worth X amount of money in assets, and it's documented. Obviously, I do business abroad and I'm a taxpayer, so there's nothing to hide. I think the questions would just die down.
Well, I think the questions have died down, to be honest. I think it's become a stale topic now. I think everyone's realized that everyone who knows me or knows of my family knows that we've been living there for 50 years. So I don't really think that's an issue anymore. There was just one small thing that they said, that my father took a short interim government role as a minister, and were these companies were formed 3 years on paper prior to that role. So look, I think they've realized it's just a big.
Okay, coming back to justice, recently, this is one particular case that you tackled yourself. I'm sure there's many others like that. The case about the young children whose parents were charged for drug trafficking in Saudi Arabia, the 2 girls and the boy. And you helped, I think the elder sister's here now, the other 2 siblings were in Saudi Arabia, I think, and they're supposed to be expected back. Initially, what we started our conversation with, what you said was that overseas Pakistanis contribute tremendously to Pakistan. Yet, when they leave the country, nobody takes care of their rights. Situations like these do happen. Are you actually reaching out to the expats all over the world, Pakistani expats, and asking them that if they have any problem in the countries that they are in, that perhaps this is how they could reach out and get help from your particular ministry?
Look, I don't like to go into all the things that we have done in terms of self-praise, but I'm probably the only minister in these ministries or my ministry that has ever even visited a labor camp. And I've visited most of them in the UAE. I've got a trip planned for Saudi, where most of our trouble or the issues that our people have. I think the ministry has done exceptionally well, and credit goes to my team that I have that have solved a lot of the overseas problems. People stuck in Iraq, people stuck in Malaysia, people stuck in Saudi, that we've brought back. The Prime Minister himself has been phenomenal in sorting out the prison issues with Saudi Arabia.
What about, if you've been to the labor camps, what about the conditions that the workers live under?
I'll be honest with you, the conditions in UAE are pretty good in most of them. In some of them they are poor, which we visited and we addressed with the time, and we tried to call the owner of the labor camps and we addressed it. Obviously they're not government-owned labor camps, they're privately owned. So there's only so much pressure you can put on them. So we are, and we're making sure that their contracts with the kafil, with the person who calls them over, is far more tighter. We've made our biometric system of sending people out a one-window operation, so they're not exploited when they go, which has never been done before. It was a complete exploitation by departments within my own ministry, and I've completely destroyed that mafia that existed. And we did it in the first 3-4 months, where and it was a huge mafia, and we destroyed it. We put a one-window operation, so your banking, everything is done within 45 minutes. While you're there, you get a sticker on your passport, you're protected, and you're gone. You don't have to pay these bribes and everything that you do prior to this. So all these things show awareness. The main thing that you can do is create awareness. The more the common person understands his rights, the more he'll stand up for them. And if you have a minister and you have a team that's willing to hear your voice if your rights are being violated, this is what happens in all the Western countries and everywhere else where justice is far better than perhaps over here. So these are the things that we've created for them. We're trying to improve certain things in embassies. We're trying to improve our community welfare attaches. On my desk I have the new recruits, I have their curriculum. I've studied their curriculum, I've changed it a little bit. I'm probably going for a re-examination because I'm not happy with it, because I don't feel that they can address the issues that I need addressed at this point in time. We're trying to open up more consulates where there are more CWAs in countries where there are more issues, rather than just paid holidays that used to be the case before. So these are all things that have never ever been addressed before, and these are things that I think the entire credit goes to the Prime Minister, that he's led from the front in this.
Okay, when you talk about recourse to justice, in your own, family life, one of your family members was murdered. That case is still pending, and people will often ask, they'll say, well, if somebody in this position is not able to get justice, then what should the rest of us expect?
I think, look, it's a good question. I think.
And I know it's a terribly personal and sensitive question, but
it's okay. I think the Pakistan historically has been very difficult, especially in criminal cases. They're very prolonged. So to find justice is very difficult, especially when the other side is also an existing mafia.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think my late brother-in-law Fahad, his brother Jawad has worked exceptionally hard. I think the whole entire family's pulled together, and we're getting to the final stages of where we want the case to be, inshallah. But it's been a difficult task, and I agree with you that if we are having so much difficulty, who Allah is probably blessed with more to get good lawyers, to have more contacts, then and from the very beginning when Fahad was brutally murdered, from the very beginning I said that if we are going to struggle with this, what chance does a common man have? And this is one of the first things I said, and I stand by it, that if justice can't be served here and can't be served in cases similar to this, what does a normal common man does who's lost his dear ones? So look, this is all part of a system, right? This is not about a one isolated case. I mean, for us it may be because it's a personal case to us, but generally it's an entire system. It shouldn't matter if it's Zulfi Bukhari's brother-in-law or if it's XYZ's brother-in-law. Justice is justice. And at the end of the day, we have to sort of work within the system to try to fix it. And quicker that we can get to justice and our courts can get to decisions, better it always. That's the way that it can only run. It's prolonged, and one of the main things we need to do is probably revamp the justice system.
You're a part of the government right now, and there's news from different sources that say that the reason why the government perhaps is not working as effectively as it could is because there is infighting happening between circles within PTI's government. How true is that? Or is it just rumors?
I don't think that's true at all. I mean, if you're referring to a couple of, just a little bit of a argument between, seniors or whoever, you need to understand a political party, and especially the cabinet, but even the entire political party is like a family, and in a family, you, me, everybody has different opinions and a different personality. So, but it never happens in a family that two brothers or a brother and sister, two sisters don't have a skirmish or don't have an argument or don't, have a blowout here and there. It happens everywhere. So why would it just be that a political party, people that you spend 24 hours with, people that you spend the last decade, 2 decades with, some of the seniors have spent 3 decades or 4 decades together with each other. Why do we consider it such a big deal if they've had a little bit of a blowout or a little bit of an argument?
No, we don't expect that not to happen. What we do get surprised about is when those blowouts or those conflicts are actually aired publicly through Twitter or through statements on TV. That is something people take exception to.
I agree. It 100% shouldn't. Like I said, we're all family, and family issues should stay within the family. So I agree that it shouldn't be done, but sometimes people, heat of the moment, you don't. Social media is not always a great thing.
No, it isn't always such a
So sometimes, people have felt that social media or media has become a way to express yourself. So maybe they did, and it's wrong. It shouldn't happen. But if it happens, both individuals are highly credible and highly dear to the entire PTI family. And it's happened, but there are seniors, and they'll lead us out of it.
Okay, you already have a ministry where you've said there's tremendous amount of work to be done. What made you decide to agree to taking on tourism as well? You already said you have enough on your plate, and then you have your work abroad, and then you took on the additional charge.
My life, I've been used to working hard. I've been used to putting in the hours. And business in England is not that you can roll into the office at 11, 12 o'clock. You know, it's from morning to late, especially when it's your own business or companies. So, you know, hard work, a challenge is a challenge. And at the end of the day,
no, but don't you think you have enough on your plate? You just said this is a huge ministry that you want to overhaul, the overseas Pakistani ministry. You said that there is so much that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And you're just putting your team together and you're getting issues sorted out. And then to take on tourism is also a big deal. It's not just...
It's a very big deal because it's the closest thing to the Prime Minister's heart. So it's something that's being watched 24/7. Okay. So that's why it's not that the work scares me. What scares me is the Prime Minister looking at it 24/7 saying, kuch hua hai.
So you're not scared that you're not going to deliver. You're very assured that you will deliver. It's just that it's the Prime Minister watching you.
I think comparatively to what's happened in Pakistan, delivering is not an issue because no one's ever delivered for decades. So to be compared to what delivery is called, I'm not worried about that.
But that's not your benchmark, is it?
Absolutely not. Our benchmark is the Prime Minister.
Okay.
And the way that he sees things. So that's why I said that that's what makes me nervous from the very beginning, is because he will go through this with a fine-tooth comb, and he will see that what's happened. So it is a lot of work, I agree, but it's a challenge, and alhamdulillah, you know, we don't say no to challenges.
I'm sure you don't say no, but I'm just wondering, so now what will be your agenda for tourism? Because now that's a different thing altogether.
Look, I
mean, everybody knows that of course we need to generate more tourism.
There are certain things in my ministry and in the government which get me excited, which make me like, this is my, like I know things that I can do very easily, and I know things which are going to be a task for me, or will make me feel personally proud. One is EOBI, because I feel very emotional about it.
Okay.
And I feel that I want to, you know, in my mind, if there's a way I can take it to make a national pension fund for the whole entire country, would be my benchmark. Sorting the issues out of OPF, which is Overseas Pakistan Foundation. There's been properties in there that haven't been touched for 20 years, and people have given money for them. First time now, I went personally on the land and got rid of the qabza from groups over here. And now we're starting.
And that's a mafia, so that's probably very, very hard to do.
And I went myself, and we inaugurated a project in Lahore which was 20 years dormant. Obviously, the labor the numbers have decreased over the years, so trying to increase the numbers of Pakistanis going abroad. But tourism, so these are on this side, and tourism then is the fourth thing that I want to concentrate on, obviously, where if I can just put a policy in place at a national level of where we should go. And I think the Prime Minister said something today also, which is very close to my heart, is that there's I don't think making tourism successful in Pakistan is difficult. I seriously don't believe that. I believe that it's very easy because I've toured a lot of Pakistan thanks to the Prime Minister. With him, I've gone to places alone with him which are phenomenal. And I've traveled the world, and nothing compares to the beauty you have in Pakistan in terms of the diversity that you have. But
we have infrastructure issues.
We do, but
hotels.
see, these things I think are not difficult. I think what's difficult is controlled tourism. You know, you don't want to ruin your heritage and your culture by bringing tourism out, which a lot of countries have done. So keeping that fine balance that we have, that we want to have, I think is going to be the difficult bit. I think the infrastructure and all of this is not all that difficult. It will be difficult to start with because you'll find resistance in a lot of places. But I think once we can, and obviously a lack of funds is obviously difficult, but I think the keenness in people to invest in tourism can only be successful if we bring the private sector into it. It's not the government's job to start building hotels and
for
resorts.
The private sector
Exactly.
to come in, for the government to be able to facilitate them.
So it's not our job to build this. So as long as we can appeal to the private sector, bring them in and provide them infrastructure, it's not a problem. I personally don't believe it is.
And you said you want controlled tourism. Having said that, you have an easy visa policy, which I think is going to be in place within a week or 10 days. Wouldn't that make it easier for people to get visas?
Yes, but when I say control, I don't mean control in terms of access. You know, Pakistan, I'm all for opening up Pakistan. Let it be British Airways, let it be visa policies, let it be NOCs for foreigners to travel Pakistan. But what I mean by control is not mass level tourism. You know, we don't want the ban on the wrist and, a high level of tourists coming and ruining an area. Don't forget, you're not used to hundreds, thousands or millions of foreigners coming into areas where, especially when you go to GB, they have their own heritage, their own culture. What I meant by is keeping our heritage and culture intact as tourism comes in. So rather than thinking always outbound of foreign tourism coming in, I think the most amount of potential in Pakistan is the inbound tourism.
Okay.
And inbound tourism will always keep your heritage and culture intact because it understands it better. And as that grows, your foreign tourism will increase slowly with it anyways. But there's enough potential and ability to make the tourism sector successful within Pakistan, with Pakistanis and overseas Pakistanis.
Okay, so in the next, you said you have a short-term plan where you're going to go for the low-hanging fruit, then I'm sure you have a mid-term plan, and then you have a long-term plan, which we'll probably see once the 5-year tenure is up. What is the short-term, what is the mid-term, and what do you ultimately want to accomplish in the 5-year tenure that you will be serving?
In which section?
Oh, with the overseas Pakistani.
Overseas.
Let's start with that.
Look, with overseas, if I just give it as a macro level with all the departments combined rather than going through
You've mentioned that you want to
department.
make it financially viable.
Look, the most important thing people don't understand is making something financially viable. Reason being is this, that if I can make it financially, if I can make my departments financially stronger, that's the only way I can provide better social care for the Pakistanis, for the overseas Pakistanis. So if I can get rid of, which I will, in the next 3 months, God willing, inshallah, I will reactivate all of our housing societies which have been dormant for 10, 20 years. I've already done one.
Okay.
I'll get to another. I'll finish them all, inshallah, in the next maybe 4 months at a push. Same goes with EOBI. So getting rid of all of our dormant assets that have been generating no money for the last 10 to 20 years.
So that's your goal for the first 3 months?
That's the goal, because that then puts me on all cylinder go. That allows me to start developing the ones that are nearly developed, starting the ones that aren't started, I start getting in rental yields at different phases. So if I can finish the OE center in Islamabad in the next 6 months, that's 6 months from now I'm getting a whole load of rental all of a sudden coming in. That allows me to spend on branding. That allows me to increase their, make better offices for the poor workers that come in and have to go reduce some of their costs. This is what allows me, rather than asking from the government. So the low-hanging fruit is making it self-generating, and the lowest is obviously getting rid of all these hurdles that have been there for years. So clearing out all the disputes is my first priority. Second priority is digitalization. Okay. The point is to leave here in 5 years, and Zulfi is irrelevant, but the fact that the departments are self-sustainable and digitalized.
So you want to put systems in place that
systems
will continue
in place
beyond
that tomorrow,
your
if a Zulfi
tenure.
comes or if a Khurshid Shah comes, he can't manipulate with the system, and nor can I.
You were criticizing him, and now you're comparing yourself.
Well, I'm saying that it doesn't matter that if good comes or bad comes.
Okay.
But whoever comes has to just work with the system. So I was giving you both extremes.
So
One highly
digitalizing it
corrupt.
will keep checks and balances on.
Absolutely.
the
So
corrupt.
it should be. You see, when I was living in England, I didn't even know my MP's name in my area. I've never had to go to a department and call up the minister of the department, or call up the councillor of the department, or mayor of the area. You just go into the department and you do your job, and you would ask for something, and they'll look at it and they'll stamp it, and you go. So my point is that when I leave in 5 years, my ideal inshallah goal is that irrelevant of who's going to come in the next elections, even if you've got a clean and clear party like PTI, or if you've got PPP, it doesn't matter. The institution should be strong enough to stand on its own and shouldn't allow any form of, and digitalization is the key.
Okay, so you expect the digitalization to happen within a year?
No, digitalization as a whole is very difficult. It takes time. My ministry is probably the first ministry to go into e-governance. It was the first ministry to go into e-governance. So I don't have many files. It's all on the computer. And I can check how long each file is on each desk down to the section officer of my ministry. So if I know the section officer has held onto a file for more than 3 days, I'll say, why is it there for 3 days? Push it up. So, but to get into all the systems of the government it takes time. Like I'll give you an example of Dubai. Digital to Dubai. Dubai also had a lot of red tapeism, a lot of issues as well. But then His Royal Highness Sheikh Rashid basically became the digitalization minister. He headed Digital Dubai just to bulldoze through and make it digital. And now his son Sheikh Hamdan is basically overseeing it and running it. And the minute they digitalized it, that's when Dubai started running as effectively as it does. So that is the key that I want to do, at least in my own institutions.
So that's your ultimate goal for when you leave office, so that the systems become stronger and the individual who's heading it is not as important.
Because that plus that equals that the poor person is completely empowered and has all the rights. And we just end up just being servants of his to facilitate his rights. And that's the way that a clean and honest, just system has to work, not the other way around. So the minute that we do these things, it becomes a plus plus, and the equal sign is the poor person being empowered and us as government servants actually acting as servants and working for him.
Well, I truly hope that happens. Finally, I'd like to ask you, I've heard that quite a few of the ministers in this particular government, you being one of them, have decided to not take their salary and rather donate it to the dam fund. Is that correct?
I believe, I don't know who else has, but I know there's quite a few that have given 1 month, 2 months, or their salaries. I, from the very beginning, this is a passion project for me. That's because of the Prime Minister that I'm here. So I, from the very beginning, donated my salary to the dam fund for the entire term.
Okay, so you're donating your salary. You said your business is not doing as well. You still have another 4 years to go. Is it sustainable?
When I say my business is not doing well, I'm saying my business is not doing perhaps as well as it should when I'm there. But you can't do everything. If I start worrying about what's going to happen in 4 years, I won't be able to do what I'm tasked to do here now. If God forbid, something goes terribly wrong in London and I can't sustain myself anymore, then I'll have to ask to leave or something of the sort. But I cross that bridge when I come in. I don't worry about that because I'm solely committed. I don't have time to look at my London phone. So I speak to my business partners or my MDs and everything like maybe once a week, once every 10 days after they get really frustrated and they say, please stop. So, these things we just have to, you have to put on the sideline because you have to concentrate on your goal. And my goal is this: either I shouldn't have taken it, but now that I have, I'm putting, me personally, I feel that I've worked hard my entire life in England. I created a reputation for myself. In my own field, perhaps I was successful. So I've put all that at risk in this office. So I want to walk out of it at least with, if nobody else, then at least the people who were here to serve to turn around and say that we did something.
Minister of State Bukhari, 4 years down the road, sees himself being in Pakistan, back to work.
No, I'm in Pakistan.
Business as usual.
I'm in Pakistan.
So you've come here, you're going to finish these 4 years, and 4 years down the road, you see yourself still actively involved politically and continuing to stay here? Because we do have long-term goals.
I'm in Pakistan.
For the foreseeable future, or with the intention that you actually plan on spending?
No, I'm moving my family back here as well now in July. So I'm moving, I've fully moved. I've moved here a year ago, but now my whole family. So I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. I'm here, but my beginning and end was with the Prime Minister. So it's whatever he decides at whatever stage.
So as long as the Prime Minister is politically active, you will continue to stay in politics? Your political affiliation is
and
with
as long as he
PTI.
wants me to. So the minute he doesn't, then it's a no-brainer for me.
But you would not then be politically active?
No, because my politics is not self-centric. It's behind the Prime Minister. So if the Prime Minister tells me to get out of here, I'm out of here.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking out the time and giving us this interview. We truly appreciate it, and I hope that the people who are watching this, who have many, many questions regarding overseas Pakistanis, you've probably answered the vast majority of them. But I'm sure that for people who are in any situation globally, Pakistanis who are working in various parts of the world, is there a particular website or a number that they can call or reach out to should they need any assistance?
There's an app called Sar Zameen. It's on the OPF website, it's on the ministry website, and we've now prepared an app for it for your phones as well, which will be launched in the next week. Next week it will be launched. And so, you know, you can always, there's a complaint cell in this ministry, and I've actually emptied the room, 2 rooms down, and that's a 24-hour complaint cell for Kaur Sar Zameen, which I look at personally itself. So you can always lodge your complaint over there.
So it's called Sar Zameen, and what is the response time generally? What should people expect?
Look, the response time is immediate. Resolving the complaint is not
Depends on the
not
nature
immediate,
of the
because it
complaint,
could be a possession or a qabza issue in Gujranwala.
Okay.
So, you know, there's the 10 departments involved until I get to Gujranwala. So these things are long-winded sometimes. Sometimes, inshallah, we get a good result from it. But the response time is immediate.
Okay. Well, again, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. As always, like we say, I hope that Pakistan is headed towards a brighter and more prosperous future. Thank you for watching. See you next time.